Kids, I'm sorry. Gotta go to public school now.
Jorge Masvidal is being slammed for his salty behavior at UFC 291. The former BMF champion had the honor of passing the torch and handing the belt to the winner of Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje at UFC 291. Since Masvidal is Poirier's teammate, he naturally favored the Louisiana native to win. But when Gaethje pulled off the unthinkable, Masvidal nimbly walked towards him, put the belt on his shoulder, and walked away without saying any nice things. Body language experts were quick to judge Salt Bae Masvidal's inner feelings. Now, of course, Masvidal was sad because his friend lost, but his saltiness had to do with money, since he had bet $100,000 on Poirier, and sadly, the diamond lost. Masvidal's children will now have to go to public school, he jokes.
Justin looked down and came up with a head kick, and he caught my boy. It was a perfect kick. And that was all she wrote, man. That was a hell of a shot. Justin looked in the best shape ever. And obviously, he's my teammate, so I wanted the world for him. I wanted him to win, you know. So I probably shouldn't have. I put $100,000 on DP on Dustin Poirier. Kids, I'm sorry. Gotta go to public school now.
Justin Gaethje wasn't lying when he said Masvidal would hate to wrap the belt around the waist.
It seems like the plan is to have Jorge Masvidal wrap the belt around the winner here, but he's a teammate of Dustin. He says he thinks Dustin is going to win. Do you even want him to do that if you win this fight?
Yeah, I want to make him do it. Yeah, that'd be nice.
Make the moment sweeter for you.
Yep.
Who do you think?
I know he'll hate it, so I'll love it that much more.
Justin Gaethje's so petty, and we love it. The UFC being petty is something that MMA fans do not appreciate, and the promotion has come under fire for not handing Stephen Thompson his show money at UFC 291. But before we go into the details of that story, please subscribe to Takedown MMA and turn on those notifications. Thank you. At UFC 291, former two-time welterweight title challenger Stephen Thompson was scheduled to face Michael Pereira, but Wonderboy pulled out of the fight a day before the event because his opponent missed weight by 3 pounds. This led the UFC to negotiate with Thompson in an attempt to keep the fight on the card, but to no avail. Thompson, who lost by split decision to Darren Till when the latter missed weight for their fight in 2019, didn't want to jeopardize his title aspirations by repeating the mistake of fighting a heavier opponent. Here's what Thompson said in his official statement, quote, "I made weight this morning, as I've done every fight during my 11-plus year UFC career. My opponent did not. This isn't the first time I've had an opponent miss weight, and given how that played out previously, myself and my team felt that it's ultimately not smart for us to move forward with this fight." The UFC allegedly retaliated by withholding his show money, and needless to say, received a lot of criticism for it. Journalist Ben Folks said, quote, "If $1 billion a year company is really holding on to Stephen Thompson's show money, which is a tiny fraction of what the UFC got paid just to bring this event to Salt Lake City before a single ticket or pay-per-view was sold, well, that'd be a whole new level of unconscionable greed." Now, the equation's simple. Thompson didn't fight, so he didn't get any money, right? Wrong, according to journalist Trent Reinsmith, who said, quote, "Stephen Thompson not being paid show money. And while it's true that he didn't fight, the arbitrary nature of how the UFC decides who to pay and who not to pay in cases like this is frustrating. There should be one rule. Ideally, that would be, you make weight, you get show money." Perhaps a fighters' union would help? Again, quoting, "You know what would help fighters who choose to not fight opponents who miss weight? A fighters' union. But instead, Stephen Thompson doesn't get any show money for doing his job, which doesn't entail being forced to fight opponents with a distinct advantage." Not a good look for the UFC, especially when they're regularly criticized over fighter pay. What do you guys think? Flyweight GOAT Demetrious Johnson is adamant to prove that size doesn't matter, no pun intended. The one flyweight world champion recently defended his belt against a man almost twice his size in Adriano Moraes. And he's now going a step further by accepting bodybuilder Bradley Martin's challenge. Martin is a 6'3", 250-pound bodybuilding beast, whereas Johnson is a fun-size 5'3" fighter who walks around at less than 150 pounds. But, as they say, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog. Martin claims he can beat up MMA fighters. and Johnson's willing to prove him wrong.
I spoke to Mighty Mouse yesterday. I tell everybody, all fighters hit me up about you. I'm like, bro, he's my boy, good dude. So I told Mighty Mouse, I'm telling you, good dude. And he's like, yeah, no doubt. He's like, just tell him I'm down. He's like, it's not gonna go well. I'm like, no, I know. That's why I wanted to go down. And he goes, I have to go on vacation. I think he's going. I'm not gonna say where he's going, but he said I'm going on vacation. So let's figure it out. But I'll come to LA.
I can't
Just
wait.
let me know.
Someone please tell this bodybuilder dude that he's in for a rude awakening. I'm betting my house on Johnson. What about you guys? Next up, is it time for a rematch between Derrick Lewis and Francis Ngannou? The Black Beast fought out his UFC contract at UFC 291, where he finished Marcos Rogerio de Lima with a flying knee followed by ground and pound, snapping a 3-fight losing streak in the process. Lewis hopes to re-sign with the UFC because it's his dream to win the heavyweight title.
I'm hoping to stay here in UFC. You know, I like it here. I like the staff. Everybody's cool here except for the media. You know, y'all dickheads. Like, y'all, really. I should walk out right now, y'all. But go ahead. Next question.
However, if the UFC shoots itself in the foot and lets Lewis go, a potential rematch between him and Ngannou in the PFL could be on the cards, especially given the fact that Ngannou lost to Lewis a few years ago. Ben Askren, for example, has an idea. PFL about to make Derrick Lewis a gigantic offer, is what he said in a tweet. MMA History Today said, quote, Derrick Lewis is a free agent. Francis Ngannou needs an opponent for his PFL debut. Run it back and have a real fight this time? Why not? Lewis would make at least 5 times more than what he makes in the UFC. That should be enough for him to turn his back on the UFC, according to this Twitter user. Quote, Derrick Lewis should basically ask for $2 million per fight from the UFC. And we all know, in all likeness, the UFC is not going to pay him that amount. So Derrick Lewis versus Francis Ngannou 2 in the PFL is nothing but guaranteed at this point. What do you guys think? After submitting him at UFC 291, Kevin Holland thinks Michael Chiesa should quit fighting because he isn't particularly good at it, and should focus on commentary because he's the best analyst in the UFC.
He should retire. I'm gonna be real, like if his goal is to get to a belt and he can't get past me, then he's not getting to a belt. But commentating, he can teach a lot of these guys how to commentate. I think he's one of the better commentators. He's not biased like all these other guys are. And overall, yeah, he's just one of the better commentators. Like, he's probably the best commentator out of all of them, so.
Chiesa isn't done yet. This is what he said in an Instagram post, quote, well, that sucked. Congrats to Kevin Holland and his team. Kevin is a hell of a fighter, one of the most game fighters in combat sports. I knew this was a very challenging opponent to face coming off almost a 2-year layoff, but I've never said no to a fight. I'll dust myself off, get back in the gym, and get back to work. I ain't done yet. Should Michael Chiesa listen to Kevin Holland's advice? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. To stay up to date with the latest happenings in the world of mixed martial arts and boxing, please subscribe to Takedown MMA and turn on those notifications. Thank you for your continued love and support, and we'll see you in the next one.